I have little to no empathy. Also, I've believed for a pretty long time. Only really started changing the last 2 years ago. You see, I've always had trouble with social emotional reciprocity. Reciprocity. There we go. Meaning that when people around me got sad for whatever reason, I wouldn't really get sad with them. If people around me got mad at something, I wouldn't really get mad with them. If somebody around me got embarrassed, I wouldn't really feel embarrassed. If somebody around me was like in a really fun mood, but I really wasn't, that wouldn't really pull me along. Similarly, if people found something like morally abhorrent, but I really didn't care, then I wouldn't care. I wouldn't kind of mirror their emotions and their states, right? And because of that, and because I realized it myself, and my friends realized that, and my family realized that, I always had other people tell me that I lack empathy. For example, when there was a fight going on at the dinner table, but it didn't include me, I wouldn't really interact with it. I wouldn't really care. I would just continue eating my food in peace. People around me could be screaming and getting agitated, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't follow along. I wouldn't get stressed by it. I wouldn't get annoyed by it much. I would just kind of do my own thing. Not that I actively do bad things to other people, but that I can't share other people's feelings. That if somebody loses a family member, I don't really react much. I don't get sad for them. And that is kind of true, because I don't instinctively do that. At least not nearly as much as the people around me. And over the years, I realized this myself, as well as being told it repeatedly by people around me. I kind of internalized it. I kind of internalized that I have no empathy, or at least a lot less than other people. For humans. For animals, it's a different story. If I see an animal being hurt, a cat being hurt, a dog being mistreated, I get incredibly sad. But anyway, I internalized that I have no empathy. However, in recent times, like the last 2-ish years, my perspective on this changed. I no longer think that I don't have empathy. I think I learned to have empathy. And Dr. K played a very important role for that. And I really appreciate him, and I really value Dr. K's insight into humanity, the human mind, a lot. But before I give the dictionary definition first, and then talk about what I think about empathy, why I think that, how about you give your definition of empathy first? Maybe write a comment if you want to, help the algorithm, haha. But either way, stop the video, think about what you think empathy is. Maybe even get an example. You know, the walk in somebody else's shoes kind of stuff. Like, what do you think empathy is? What does it encompass? What does it mean? What is empathy? Examples. Is it empathy to not punch someone because you know that they would be hurt, right? Like, think about it. Alright, you thought about it? First, the dictionary definition of empathy, according to the Oxford Language Dictionary, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And the understand part is very important in my mind. Because I always like the feeling of sharing other people's feelings, yet I'd still say that I have empathy. At least I learned empathy. I guess I should differentiate it by learned empathy and instinctual empathy. Why I think that's important is because the way we usually work, or at least the way in my experience and what I read up on psychology and what I observe people doing, is that the way we kind of function empathy-wise is we superimpose our own ideas and our own perspectives and our own feelings onto others' situation to then judge what we would be feeling in that situation. What I mean by that is when somebody tells you that their family members died, you don't really consider like, oh, is that person sad? Did he actually hate his family? Is he actually like super glad that they're dead? Is he getting a big inheritance? Maybe you always felt indifferent. Like, we don't consider these things really, right? We just hear family member dead. Then you think about your own family, or about how most people feel about their family. Maybe if you are aware that your own family situation is abnormal. And then you think, oh well, I would probably be sad if my family members died. Or maybe even if I wasn't, that is only because my family was super abnormal and most people would feel sad. So this person probably feels sad, right? That's kind of how that works. We superimpose. If somebody says, oh, my coworker stole my food, you kind of think to yourself, well, I would be annoyed if somebody stole my food, so they're probably annoyed. That is how empathy works. And usually, most of the time, I don't think that's incorrect. We have our individual differences, but by and large, the human experience is similar enough, right? Or at least I think it is similar enough. There's probably like not a lot of people who would be glad if they got punched in the face. There's probably not a lot of people who would be glad if they got laughed at or bullied. There's probably not a lot of people who would be glad that their family members or pets died. There's probably not a lot of people who want to be like standing out in public, right? All of these experiences are so universal. The experience of being the outsider is so universal. The experience of being looked down upon, for example, is so universal that generally speaking, there's I call it instinctual empathy, sort of works, right? But it doesn't always work. There are plenty of cases where this instinctual response more or less, I don't know if backfires, but certainly doesn't work as well as in other situations. And I'm pretty sure that everybody actually experiences this. I don't know how aware you are of this, because I don't know how much people think about this type of stuff. But take, for example, a bodybuilder and a fat person. A fat person takes as a standard for what good looks are, for what they want to look like, their own body. If you're obese, for example, just simply being skinny, again, not like being skinny to the point where you can see and count each individual rib, but just not being obese is probably something that they would celebrate, right? So if a bodybuilder then comes to them and says, I have body dysmorphia, I am so unhappy about my self-image, I have uneven bicepses, my chest is too small, I have too much body fat, even though they're like at 15%. What is this obese person going to react to that? Do you think he's going to be like, oh, I completely understand you. I also have self-image trouble. I also dislike the way this looks and that looks and whatever. Maybe some of them will. But do you think that every fat person would be that understanding to an obese person, to a bodybuilder that is having self-image troubles? Or do you think a more common response, or at least as common of a response, would be, but why? What do you have to be unhappy about? You're so in shape. I'm fat and you're way better shape than me. Why are you unhappy? That's something that I feel like would be even more common, to be honest, personally, of a response than being understanding, trying to relate to it. And this difference will become even more apparent in the case of mental illnesses or disorders. Depression being one of the biggest of that, the biggest perpetrators in that case. Somebody who's unhappy yet objectively leads a good life, and I'm putting it in air quotes, you can't see those, but I'm putting it in air quotes, will probably never really find understanding for having no motivation or being unhappy or suffering, right? It's the usual, how could you be unhappy if there are starving children in Africa? Like, you're not finishing your food, you're ungrateful, there are people literally starving. Because we don't take the standard of that person, the perspective of that person into mind. We just superimpose our ideas of what it should be like onto them. And these are more often than not our own standards. Sometimes they might be societal standards. But we superimpose these standards and these perspectives on feelings onto someone and then judge what we think they would be feeling or should be feeling instead of their actual emotions. And I can only repeat that I don't really consider this to be evil or anything, right? I sound like I'm judging, and I guess I am judging, but this is just the way people are, and more often than not, this will be correct. We have a shared human experience. Nobody likes to starve, nobody likes to be fat, nobody likes to be made fun of, yada yada yada, I already said that. But this can also backfire in major ways, and in my mind, isn't all there is to empathy. Sharing this kind of instinctual response, the I will cry with you thing, is one part, but it's missing the understanding part. And this is what Dr. K excels at. This is why I love watching his interviews, love watching his insights, love hearing him talk. Love watching his insights? Love hearing his insights into the human experience. Because the one thing that Dr. K excels at, more than anyone I've ever listened to, is understanding people. Understanding their perspective. Not going, oh, you aren't depressed because you don't exhibit these symptoms. But instead going, why do you feel depressed? Trying to understand them. Asking them follow-up questions. And this process of, I guess what I'd call learned empathy, is one that you can only really achieve if you ask questions. Or at least analyze people while they're talking. You don't really get this by just coming to a conclusion before you even ask them about their personal life. You don't really get this kind of, I don't really know a better way to describe it than learned empathy, by simply hearing someone say, oh, I'm depressed. You will never understand why they're depressed, what they actually feel like. You will never understand their emotions that way, which is something that I see people do, especially on the internet, a lot. Where it's just like, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I also had depression at one point. I feel you. No, you don't. You don't ask questions. That person might have a different experience. He might have entirely different symptoms. And we mostly do this because we don't actually care about other people, I imagine. But either way, it's not actual empathy in my mind. Or at least not the full empathy. Not the whole experience. And in this context, there's one Dr. K clip in particular from a video where he was talking, a live stream where he was talking about autism that stuck with me. I don't know if I'm autistic or not, that's not the point. But just a clip in particular that really stuck with me that I will just play first before I continue yapping about it.
If y'all are struggling with autism, you have my condolences, you have my sympathies. I wish I could say you have my empathy, but I don't. One of the things I learned a while ago, I have some degree of probably, empathy for some neurodiversity on the ADHD spectrum, and there's some overlap there and things like that. But I mean, I really don't. And this is one of the things that I learned as a clinician is, I really don't know what it's like.
So yeah, Dr. K saying he doesn't actually empathize with people with autism. That clip really stuck with me because of multiple things. Usually Dr. K is so good at understanding people, at getting their insights, at getting their perspectives. And yet he's saying he doesn't empathize. He doesn't understand. He can't imagine what it's like to be autistic. He sympathizes, meaning he feels sad for them, but he can't feel with them because he doesn't understand their emotions, because they're too different from his own experiences, the way they interact with the world, the way they engage with the world. You don't get to tell an autistic person that you understand how they feel because you also feel stressed, right? Or you also dislike work. These aren't the same things. Autism in and of itself brings with it the fact that they engage with it differently, that they experience it differently. So saying that you understand it is just a lie. And this clip really cemented in my mind what empathy actually should be. And not just for autistic or non-autistic people. The same would go for depression, right? A depressed person saying that they have no motivation isn't the same as you feeling down one day. It's different. They have a different experience. They have a different feeling. You can't just say, oh yeah, I totally get you. I also feel like shit when I have a hangover. It's not the same thing. And secondly, the reason it really stuck with me is the humility. Dr. K is already I don't know if it's fair to say that, but I'd say he's already a genius when it comes to understanding people, when it comes to understanding humans, the human mind, the human experience. At least I've never heard someone speak with such an emotional insight before, neither in my personal life nor on the internet, than I heard Dr. K. And yet he has the humility to say he doesn't understand. And I value that a lot. It's one of the clips that really cemented Dr. K as one of the best speakers when it comes to the human experience in my mind. And I felt like I wanted to share my understanding and my insights as well as just kind of gush about Dr. K in a video. But yeah, that's about all I have to say. Thank you for watching. If you have anything to annoy me with or argue with or comment on, feel free to do. If it's a negative comment, then you can also comment it, but please don't. No, I'm kidding. If you have criticism, you can also obviously say that. If you have praise, criticism, whatever, or just want to talk with me, feel free to comment it. If not, then either way, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.